Assalamualaikum. So inshallah, we're going to continue with our third and final session for today, at least. And so far in today's discussion, these sessions, we've talked about quite a few many different things, but it's about laying the groundwork, right? About starting from ourselves as human beings, from the situation that we find ourselves in, from the condition that we find ourselves in. What kind of guidance can we reach? What kind of understanding can we reach? And what is the role or potential role of a prophet here? And in the last session, especially, we talked about the need for revelation, right? And the need for divine guidance, and the need for not just reading revelation or scripture, but living it. And that this is that in the way that I find myself existing and being in this world, that my learning experience, the way that I find myself, if you will, for lack of a better wording, programmed or designed to understand, is through instruction, is through a practical guide, as we said. But the question here that we can begin with today is, or at least this session, is why does that have to be an external figure, right? Like in the examples that we talked about like a teaching assistant or a lab technician or peer review, but these are all external figures. So when talking about, again, the feedback loop, we're talking about a practical guide. Why does it have to be someone other than me? Why can't it be me? Hence the title of today's session, Why Shall I Not Be That Prophet? And having said that, you can maybe start us off.
Okay, thank you. So I guess in a more general sense, the question is, so two questions there. The first one is, who would be the recipient of revelation? I do expect the Creator to talk to me, but who the Creator would talk to is a question that I have in mind. So for example, if I were to, let's say I'm the teacher and there are students in class. All of them are students. I'm teaching all of them. But what would it mean to be a good student versus a bad student, sort of a thing? Like for an ideal student-teacher relationship. Let's assume the teacher is ideal. But how about the student? What does it mean to be an ideal student? Because every student is receiving instruction from the teacher, but at different degrees. And in here, we are talking about, at the very beginning, we talked about like through rain and the trees and everything, I receive instruction from my Creator. So instruction is being taken already. But we are now talking about a specific type of instruction, which is instruction in human speech. So the question then becomes, is there such a, if you like, spectrum of how would I be a better addressee of such a speech versus how would I be a worse addressee of the speech? Because once this happens, then I can understand actually why maybe I'm not that prophet. Because if it is that somebody is more receptive to it, it would be okay and easy to understand that, of course, if somebody is to be spoken to, first and foremost, it's going to be that person. It's understandable. But the question is, more general question is, how or to whom does the Creator speak?
And I guess just to pause here, I mean, in one sense, the question is about what is it to be a recipient of revelation, and what is a determiner of being a recipient of revelation. But I guess there should be a distinct, like not a side note here, perhaps in parentheses, to say that in one sense, revelation is continuously being revealed to me, right, within the circumstances of my life, within the context of my life. But there's a difference between that continuous revelation and then a sort of fixed revelation of being like the receiver of the if you will, at one point in time, or the initial recipient of it that then transmits it or becomes a guide, a practical guide for it. So I just wanted to make that distinction. But I guess again, let me just reiterate that first question of what is it to be? What is the determiner of who gets to be a recipient of revelation in that second sense that I talked about, because I think it is important to keep in mind that when we do engage with revelation, like I should read it as if it's being revealed to me. And I think that's important to know.
Yeah, as it speaks to me today, when I take the Mus'haf and open the Quran, as I read it, it's speaking to me. That's right. That's a good point. But in general, so let's make this general question. How can I make more from the revelation? To make it more clear what I'm trying to say with that is. So in terms of a speech, it's a two-way communication. So there's speaker and there's this addressee. So speaker in this case is the creator of heavens and the earth and me and everything. Who am I? So how do I define myself in that relationship? So do I define myself as, well, a person who earns this much money, who is this much tall, who is this much, I don't know, handsome, wealthy, smart, whatever. Is this who am I? Or am I the person who says, I don't own a penny, I don't own my intellect, I don't own like my handsomeness, I don't own anything actually. And this is why ultimately I don't have any answer to all those questions that I have, all those troubles in my life, I'm not able to figure out what it is. Then I am ready to listen. Because if I am smart, if I am handsome, if I am knowledgeable, then whatever you tell me, I will say, yeah, let me give my ear to that person, see if it makes sense. I already know this much of it. Maybe I can push the bar a little bit higher. In this case, I'm already feeling like I am self-sufficient to a certain extent. Beyond that point, I am seeking your help. Do I approach revelation like this as well? I might be. If I'm approaching revelation like that, what that means is I can figure out problems in life to a certain extent. But then there are some other things which I'm not able to. So let me knock the door of my creator to tell me what is going on in here. Actually, I'm defining myself. Is my self-definition correct? Let's question this. Because in this picture, I am depicting myself as a person who is to a certain extent knowledgeable. What does that mean? I am owning that knowledge, or I am owning that level of intellect. It is mine, but it's limited. So beyond that, I will need somebody else's help, the creator's help, whoever's help. But to this extent, it's mine.
And why is that a bad thing?
Yeah, why is that a bad thing? So what does that practically mean? That means I have certain qualities, certain powers in and of myself. Since this is my understanding, I would say Ayşenur also has something in and of herself. And I would say Shuaib as well. And I would say, well, Philadelphia has a certain weather. Now I'm attributing it to Philadelphia. Then I say, oh, American people are such and such. I started distributing everything to the things themselves. Why do I need God anymore? Like to the extent that I start distributing things to the people or to the things themselves, there's no need for the creator practically. Although still I might be feel like, yeah, but when a meteorite comes to the earth, still we need the help of the creator. Like as long as it's not something as huge, we as humans can tackle it. Like COVID, see, in 3 years, we found the vaccine. So we are capable. If this idea of I am capable is there, then it becomes we are capable. It becomes everything is capable. Then there's no room for God.
And these can be smaller things, like more seemingly mundane things, right? Like I see the baby, it laughs at me, right? And I say, oh, the baby's making me love him.
Yeah.
But does the baby have that awareness of what's going on?
Or you say baby is cute, let's say.
Yeah.
What's happening in this case? I'm attributing cuteness to the baby. Like this is something that we always do, but what's wrong with that? I might be feeling like in general, and you don't take it as, oh, you mean if I'm thinking like this, I'm going to hell? This is not what I'm talking about here. But the idea is, this is not a judgment about where we are going, but in general, this sort of an attitude, step by step, is eventually, if I really think about it, is leaving no room for the creator in my world. And actually, I was really feeling through this at some point in my life. I was studying for the university entrance exam and whatnot. And at this point, somebody challenged my faith. And I realized at that point, for photosynthesis, it is with this equation. For hydrogen, oxygen, making water, it is with this equation. Where is God? Why am I even talking about God? I was doing because I was raised as Muslim. That was my own reason. So if that person didn't make me question it, I would still feel like I'm okay. But the issue in here is, as I keep defining myself falsely as I own something, I do the same with the things themselves. I say hydrogen has this property inherently, oxygen has this property inherently. Satan said that I am good inherently. This is why you make me out of fire. So along these lines, what's going wrong though? Then I don't need guidance because I feel like I am a small God in this case, actually. But if there is no need for God, then that means every single one of us, every single entity here becomes a God. So this false self-definition takes me away from the need for guidance because I feel like I can do it. Why do I need somebody else to guide me? So how is that related to the question, right? The initial question, why am I not the messenger? Because how shall I be? Or to what extent am I going to be a recipient of revelation or guidance? To the extent that I realize I am not owning any of the qualities. They are just, if you like, entrusted to me, given to me. They are being given to me. It's not that they are given to me, but they are being given to me. It's not like when I was born as handsome, and for the rest of my life, I'm going to be handsome. No, every single moment, this phase is changing constantly, which for a practical case, we know, like all the particles are moving over my face. So constantly I am being given this. It's not mine.
But I'll just push you on this point just a tiny bit, which is that, you're saying that the qualities that we may, that others may observe in us, or that we may in one form or another manifest, don't belong to us, and that this is a significant aspect of our own self-conception, of our own self-definition, right? The fact that we should realize or be aware of the fact that we don't own these qualities, that we are not the owner of such qualities. But at the same time, and you were saying that they're being given or continuously being given. And, I can, in one sense, in terms of physical attributes, like I can see those changes and the fact that I don't have any control over that. But for example, my sister might have is more kind than I am, or this person is more athletic than this person, or there's a varying degree of these qualities as well, and so that comes to the question then, but if it's not theirs, then look, why does this person have it more or less? I mean, there's also that question of like, how does that play into this lack of ownership that one has?
So I guess maybe we can say, I don't know if that would answer your question, but this also might be showing that I am given less, that person is being given more. But it is being given. Actually, more interestingly, I was given more of it when I was younger, and I'm feeling like it's being taken away from me. Because if it was mine in the first place, I would like to leave away my youth. I would like to leave away my more sharp memory and intellect that I had when I was 18. It's just going away. If it was mine, I wouldn't let it go. So whoever is giving it to me, which we established in the first session as the creator of the heavens and the earth, is also giving all these. Now he's taking it away from me. But this understanding is not with me most of the time, or maybe never with me. I feel like I am strong. So this, and it's going hand in hand with how I see the universe, my environment as well. This
and
is
scripture. And scripture, and in terms of how I approach it.
Yeah, it will apply there as well. But first of all, I see myself as capable, and equally, I reflected to what I observe, and I say that, oh, this person is also smart. So I did a crime in myself. I stole the property of the creator, which was intellect, given to me. I stole it, and then the intellect which was given to him, I also stole it from the creator. It was his property, but I attributed to that person. So I am spreading my corruption, if you like, to everything. It doesn't stop here. This is why egotism, on one hand, is an inevitable friend of naturalism. Because the idea of naturalism is it's natural. It belongs, it is in its nature. The intellect is natural to him. It belongs to him. Or the property of, let's say, water. It's so how is water? Just come up with some definition for water. It's this liquid thing. If you throw it on fire, it's going to extinguish the fire. What do we say? It is nature of water, we say. It's not part of our daily language. But what does this indicate? It indicates that I am feeling like it is inherently water. It belongs to water. So this idea of me being owning something, egotism, and then things themselves having properties are so hand in hand.
I mean, it's almost maybe like, I'm sure there are better examples, but like there's a cake that's not owned by you, and then you take a slice of it, and then you say, well, this slice can be yours to the other person, this slice can be yours, and you keep distributing all the other slices as well, and say, well, each slice belongs to each of the persons without at all having to acknowledge perhaps a true
Because
owner of that.
for that slice to be mine without any conflict, I have to share the rest with everybody else. If I say that, well, this slice is mine, but it's nobody else, the rest people will say, well, then this is not yours in the first place either. So for me to be able to be smart, it belonging to me, and so that I can boast about it, I will have to admit that water is this wet thing, which is inherently wet. It is its nature.
So part of what you're emphasizing here again is that the qualities that we may observe in the things themselves or in ourselves as well can't belong to the things themselves and can't belong to us. I mean, if a quality was mine, then I would have full control over it or not let go of it as time passes. And you know, prime example of this could be youth or memory or strength or anything like that. There's something inherent about it that is not under my ownership, and that the same thing applies to everything else as well in creation. But I want to bring it back and bring it back to this primary question of what does that have to do with the fact that I can't be the sort of the prophet, but not just the prophet, but like the practical guide or the direct sort of recipient of that revelation.
So going back to the first session, so we said that there must exist a maker. We established this. Then the next step, we said that through this plant or with the sunrise or with the rain, my maker speaks to me. When we were talking about that, there was an alternative. What was the alternative? The alternative was, it's not the maker speaks to me, but I am overloading meaning to the universe. Like, think of it like there's a book here. In this book, I'm not acknowledging that it's a book. I'm just looking at it and I say that, oh, this shape means such and such. I am overloading this meaning to it.
Meaning making rather than meaning receiving.
Meaning making, yeah. So because I'm smart, so I can interpret what it means, but I am loading the meaning to it. It's not a means of some meaning coming to me. Why did I do that? Because I attributed intellect to myself, and there is no entity outside of me, like from beyond this existence. Like no such thing exists. So I am making up the meaning here.
I construct that.
I construct the meaning, yes. So, and this is very much aligned with the perspective of I am smart. Because if I inherently own something, then meaning that I will construct also belongs to me. On the other hand, this was not our path though. The path that we took so far was the universe is in a certain order, and this indicates that there is a maker behind that. And if I'm going to keep using the same analogy, like there seems to be some order. This looks like a book. It carries a meaning. So there must exist an author who is speaking to me through this book. In the example of the universe, rain is word of his speech, or sunrise is another word of his speech. He's speaking to me. So now it becomes a conversation. In this case, whom would I attribute my understanding? My understanding also becomes his speech. Or alternatively, I might get lost in between. I might say that this is what he says, and then this is how I interpret it. I can still put myself as the creator of the meaning. Why shall I not be that person who is the recipient of the revelation? To the extent that I am 100% saying that I don't own anything, I don't have any answer, then I would be truly ready to be seeking guidance from the creator. This is, we were talking about what would be a profile for a messenger. So what sort of a profile? So this is the profile that I'm looking for. Like in a classroom, the teacher would speak to the most enthusiastic person and whatnot. This is how I do when I'm teaching class. I'm looking for the person whose eyes are shining, who's most receptive. So to the extent that I can understand that I don't own anything, I have no answers, I have nothing, then to that extent, I will benefit from revelation. On the other hand, if I'm saying that, no, I am this much smart and I can understand to that extent, so then I can understand it as much as it fits here. Then up to here, I don't need your guidance. From there on, I need guidance, becomes my situation. So I need to ask the question here, to what extent am I aware of my neediness, my impotence, my quote unquote nothingness in this sense? If I am having claims of, no, I am smart, no, I can do it by myself, sort of a thing, it's quite okay that I am not being addressed directly to become that recipient, the first recipient of the revelation.
So what you're saying is that in one sense, the more one recognizes their neediness in terms of needing understanding, needing guidance, the more they become receptive to that guidance, that scripture. Is that correct?
Yes.
So then, I mean, why can't you fit the bill, or Mariam, or Brother Bikran, or Aisha, or like there might be many people who feel that same need, or who feel that same like seeking for understanding, or that same neediness, right? I mean, this seems still nevertheless like a broad spectrum of people that could fit that bill.
So I can make a comparison. Probably I cannot compare Gürkan to myself. I am saying that he is more pious than me because I have question marks there. So, but I can compare me to myself, like in terms of these levels, because I feel like relative to 3 days before or 3 days after, I sense the change in my belief, or belief in the sense of certainty of, do I own or do I not own? At some points of my life, my maker makes me more cognizant of him. And in the sense that I say everything belongs to you, I say it more. But especially at the times of success, I start feeling like that old guy is gone. And now I start owning stuff. I say that, oh yeah, of course I'm successful because I did this and this. So I see those fluctuations in my life, which gives me a clue that humans can be in different levels. I know it for a fact from my own experience. Like this iman in the sense of giving everything to the creator is fluctuating in my life. Which means I would expect somebody to be staying more in the side of leaving everything to the creator. Because let me use a phrase here. So the state of saying everything belongs to him, let's use the Quranic term for that, it's the abd, being an abd. Everything is his. So now I am seeing that this abdness in me is fluctuating. Sometimes I am starting to feel myself as more of an abd. In some other times, I am forgetting that. I am starting to feel like all those small mountains, I created them. This is being my attitude sometimes. I mean, we never, of course, say it like this, but whenever I am boastful of anything, this is practically what I am saying. So if I say that, oh, my daughter is beautiful, because I mean, look at his father and mother, they are beautiful. Making such a comment or saying that, oh, she's smart, because I mean, look at mother and father, they are smart. Saying such a statement means I partially contributed in that creation. Creation of her, I have a share. This is what it means. It practically means I created a small mountains. So since I observe this difference within me, I can now extrapolate the idea. I can say that there must be people who are more cognizant and more choosing, making their choices properly, to be staying in the out part more than I am able to.
So I guess like one way in which this would translate onto my engagement with scripture is that if I it's like it's a beautiful spider right there. It's not like welcome. So it's so I guess like how this kind of plays out then when I interact with scripture is that if I come to a verse or if I come to open it and say, well, my understanding is I kind of know what to do up to this point, but just like let me know what the other 60% is. So if I attribute a certain amount of knowledge to myself, right, then my receptivity to the scripture becomes diminished in terms of what it can offer me of guidance. So then my interaction with it becomes more about how I wish the correct interpretation to be, rather than genuinely seeking it from a place of, I don't know.
Exactly.
Guide me.
Exactly.
That seems to be the sort of crux of the topic here of how do we measure receptivity, and what states of being in me prevent that or hinder that? Is it a state of being that I can permanently get rid of, that I can train myself to, or is it something that so like if you could expand on that point a little bit, because I think that's really important.
It's very important. So defining myself incorrectly, this was the main idea, right? Because in a communication, there's speaker, there's speech, and there's the audience, the addressee. So this is really defining the context and also the purpose of the speech. But if I am defining myself incorrect, if I am defining myself as a half God, if it's a proper way to use it, then the way I would take the guidance to scripture accordingly.
And seeing myself as a half God means basically just seeing myself as a source of certain qualities, certain attributes, certain things, instead of returning them or reattributing them to their actual source of existence.
Yes, like 50% I am strong enough, smart enough, and I can achieve such and such things, but for the remaining 50%, I need God's help.
Or perhaps like I can handle this situation and that situation in my life, but it's just this specific why situation that I only need help, and everything else I got covered.
So if I define myself as such, it becomes my context, and whatever my creator now speaks to me, I will interpret it in this context. How much am I going to understand it correctly? Because now, let's say you are speaking to someone and you are an expert about something, and this other person has nothing to do with that thing, let's assume. But interestingly, that person thinks that he has some knowledge about that topic. It's so hard to talk to that person because he doesn't know, but he doesn't know that he doesn't know. He thinks he knows about the topic. You're trying to explain it, and he says, oh, yeah, this is what you are saying. No, it's not what I'm saying, you would say. Right? So, in a sense, the Creator speaks to me, as Brother Bikram was giving the example of La ilaha illallah. But in reality, I am feeling like, to a certain extent, I am Ilah, but from beyond that, God is Ilah. Then, when La ilaha illallah comes, I interpret it within this false mindset. Because I am 50% God, 50% is God, and now I am applying La ilaha illallah to that context. Am I a proper addressee of the revelation? 50%. So this is why I would say, as I am starting to feel like 50%, this is the number we use. I am 50% art and 50% math. And yesterday I was 30%, today 50%, like fluctuating. I see this. I would say my maker would speak to the one who can achieve being an art 100%. Because this person is truly worthy of being spoken to. He would be correct since that person is defining his context, him as a context properly. He would be the most appropriate, if you like, mirror for the creator to be reflected upon. And I mean, this is a very practical example. In the classroom, I speak to the student who is more receptive, who is saying, well, I don't know anything about this stuff, you tell me, rather than other students who feel like they know about the matter because they here and there, they made some Google searches and read a few tutorials and whatnot, but they mixed up everything and they feel like whatever I explain, they try to apply to their distorted understanding. It's been hard to talk to them. So this is why when I ask such a question, even asking the question itself is showing some problem, because I am not aware that am I ready to be receptive, or to what extent am I ready for the revelation to come to me?
Like even I don't know if anyone else can see it. When I see the spider, right, it's hanging by a very loose. It's like right here. It's hanging by a very loose, I guess, like thread. If I say, oh, like it's acting this way because this is the qualities of a spider, and I just dismiss it, then I don't become receptive to the speech that's also happening here within, if you will, the book of the universe, right? Then I miss out on whatever guidance can be offered here. But I guess along that note, then those who we would consider as, if one is an expert in the field of mathematics, they know this much. If one is an expert in the field of physics, they know this much. But here it seems that to be so, like, in quotes, an expert in the field, again, just excuse the terminology, in the field of living scripture, living revelation, means how needy, how much do I realize my neediness? How much can one become a sort of, as you said, a polished mirror of being able to be receptive to the guidance that is being given, and being able to say, I don't know what's going on. What is the speech here? What is the guidance here? Rather than saying, oh, it's just a spider doing its thing. I already know that, but I don't know this. I'm going to go to scripture for that. So it seems like, again, there's that inverse relationship between being aware of one's neediness and being not maybe inverse, but relationship between being aware of one's neediness and being receptive to the guidance of the scriptural message.
And actually, because of this reason, when we refer to Prophet ﷺ, what do we say? Before even saying that he is a Rasul, we say Abduhu wa Rasuluhu. So his abdness is really describing him first and foremost, because ideal abd would be the first and foremost addressee of the revelation. If I am a partial competition with the Creator, to what extent am I going to be a recipient of revelation here today, here and now as well? When I open the path, trying to get guidance from my Creator, if my attitude is, I am going to understand, what is the underlying hint here? I am capable of doing something. So this attitude is what needs to be questioned.
I mean, the attitude itself shows that I am not as receptive to the scriptural guidance as I think I am, by virtue of just where it's coming from, which is a sense of I'm, knowledgeable enough or prepared enough, or even saying I'm needy enough. There's still that sense of like ego or ownership, because even that neediness, like I don't own my neediness. I just find it. It's given. I mean, no one within our society or civilization, no one really wants to take ownership of their neediness. Neediness is kind of seen as something to do away with, right? But even within this context, when it becomes the sort of measurement of something that is, let's say, good, then my ego says, well, no, I do know my neediness. Look how needy I am. So there is that sort of impulse that we tend to find in ourselves, perhaps. But I also wanted to ask a question along the lines of like, on the flip side of things, like one again becomes, and I'm repeating these words because I think they're just important here. One becomes receptive to revelation as much as they realize their neediness, right? But there's this still like sense of being chosen to be the practical guide, right? By the creator. And how does that play into this stuff?
So we can say that again from our experience, we know that we observe that the creator is all wise. So whom would he speak to before anybody else is my question. So if he's going to talk to, would he talk to someone who is the least receptive or the most receptive? This is in practice how we observe in the creation. He is all wise, and I would expect him to speak to the most receptive one. This is why, like so far what we have discussed, I am expecting him to talk to. But now we are saying, whom is he going to talk to? Because he didn't talk to me the way I am expecting him to talk to me. I didn't hear the speech directly, although he speaks to me through rain and sun. We talked about that. But it's not answering all my questions. We talked about that. So since he's not speaking to me directly either, so I would expect him to talk to some of us at least. Whom would he talk to? So now it becomes, he would pick one of us who is most receptive. What does most receptive means? Who is most cognizant of his otherness. So messengers are chosen people, you see, right?
Yeah.
And Rasulullah's, one of the names of Rasulullah is Mustafa. Mustafa means chosen. So he was chosen among people. And it's very beautiful to think it like that, because I would expect one of us to be chosen, and practically one of us is chosen. It's not like an angel is chosen, but a human being from among us is chosen, and as we were expecting actually. In the previous section, we said that I am in need of a human guide, but there are two aspects in a messenger. One is he's going to be the recipient of that message, and then he will embody that message. It's not going to be that he is spoken to, but he keeps it for himself. I would expect my creator to talk to me, but he didn't talk to me. So how am I going to have access to that? So he would talk to one of us, but he would charge that one. He's chosen to be spoken for a reason, right? He is the best representative or embodier of the message. So the maker would show that person to me, saying that, look, this is what I meant by the creation. This is why I created the creation. Be like this person should be the purpose.
Yeah, I guess again, just to reiterate this point, that when we talk about our creator speaking to someone, right, or making them the recipient of revelation, we are, and correct me if I'm wrong here, we are talking about within the context of our sort of spatio-temporal world, right? We are talking about like at a historical point, if you will.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, again, through like the speech of creation, I am being talked to. But I wanted to just emphasize that, because I think that's so important, that I am receiving revelation every time I open the Musaf and engage with the Quran. I am receiving revelation when I dwell on my feelings and try to open them like letters, if you will. I am receiving revelation when I look at the spider, when I look at the trees or the babies or whatever. But here, I guess the point is, when we're talking about it within a space and a time of receiving, again, for lack of a better word, a physical revelation that is going to be transmitted, right? Then there needs to be like a person at a set time at a set place.
Yeah.
And that person, just taking one or two steps back, it seems that there's a contradiction between wanting to be that person versus being that person, wanting to be a prophet versus being a prophet. If you want to be a prophet, or if you see yourself as what's the best word, as applicable, if you think you can submit your resume for that, then that means that
The less you can.
the less you're actually qualified in one sense, or the less you fit that profile.
Yes. And it's very interesting, just to complete the picture. I do observe that my creator talks to me through rain. I do observe my creator talks to me through sun, through my daughter, through everything. How does my creator talk to me through human?
Yeah.
So I'm going to repeat the same thing using different terminology. So creation is a mirror, as the mirror analogy is used too much in Islamic tradition. Mirror meaning, like a mirror is a reflection. Let's say in a mirror, you look at the garden. The garden is not on the mirror, but the image of the garden is on the mirror. So in Islamic tradition, the metaphor of mirror is used for the creation. Like babies are mirrors of mercy of the creator. Or let's say rain is mirror of mercy of creator. This is why it's called Rahman. So I observe at the mirror of rain, my creator speaks to me. At the mirror of my daughter or the food, my creator speaks to me. Everything is a mirror. How about human? In the human mirror, how does my creator speak to me? So prophet would be the best mirror of the creator. Because every single human is still a mirror of my creator. But I mean, you might be reflecting it more, Osman might be reflecting it less, whatever. So there must be an exemplary, an ideal mirror, a human mirror, who is going to be reflecting the qualities of my creator. When I look at that person, I would know my creator with the best, without any hesitation, if you like, or the degrees. You understand that there are degrees, so there must be an ideal, most polished, perfect human mirror as well, which would be prophet in this.
Yeah.
I think it's important and it's somewhat also like actually exciting point, because I was wondering where you are going with like emphasizing the impotence and the neediness. I was thinking, what does it have to do with the prophet himself or the messenger? I'm just going to repeat what you guys said, but like underline it. So, prophet is the one who is aware of like his own impotence and neediness in terms of like finding answers for his human questions. But like, so there are two aspects to it. One, he's the one who has utmost consciousness of his neediness. And the second part is he's the one who is aware of his human faculties and the questions to a level that the revelation came to answer those. So like consciousness is one thing, but at the same time, meaning only in a way comes into existence if there is something just recipient of it. And that recipient means, so for example, in order for it to have an answer, first there needs to be a question. And prophet is the one who represents all of the human questions, possible human questions that like almost like the whole humanity has.
Everyone's jug of water is different size.
That's the point I'm trying to make. Like that's what makes the prophet, and that's what makes him to be the recipient of the revelation.
Like if there is the ocean, right? And or let's not say ocean, let's say lake. All right, some drinkable body of water, and I'm thirsty. Like my cup might be maybe that size.
So like, yeah, like my questions are like, let's say like only limited to the cup that I am holding, right?
Right.
Like that represents like me as Osman, like in terms of my consciousness and also the number of or intensity in terms of quantity and also the intensity of
The
the
thirst that you have.
desire, yeah, the desire of knowing about like who I am, what I am doing here, like emotions, intellect, and like everything, like what makes a human being a human being, they all need to make sense to me, like, so I'm not like, I'll know how I need to define myself and like my purpose here and like the creation around me, right? Like, as so this is my like questions in that sense, like, and for the prophet, then you can take it as like as an ocean. So he is the one who has this couple of questions in addition to a million more.
So may I say, he must be the person.
Yeah, like,
The creator would speak to someone who would have such wide questions.
Right, whoever it is, right? Someone else might have it like the size of an espresso shot. Another person might have it the size of a bottle. But whomever has the, if you will, the biggest vessel for that water, which is in essence just means whoever has the most need, the most.
you would expect that the creator of the universe like speaks to that individual who has the utmost like number of questions, because that includes every other questions like any other human being may have.
Yeah.
And
It
that
encompasses all of them.
it encompasses all of them. And since he has all those questions, that also like in a way is the proof of the comprehensiveness of the revelation or the message.
Right, and that's a beautiful analogy. Did you want to say something?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You can.
So, while listening to you, the things that we discussed in the previous session, they started, unfolded even more with this example with the mirror, for instance. So, at the end of the first session, we said we need revelation to reach us. So that was our need. And the question is like what kind of revelation that I'm expecting or what kind of revelation I'm in need of. Because when we say revelation, we may mean different things. We may mean just a sentence, for instance, written somewhere on the, let's say, mountain. Or in the same way, a sentence written in this book, let's say, and the book, the way we know today. And we should remember that the books that we know today, it's again a relatively new thing in the human history. So that's what I may mean with the revelation. But when I look at myself, what I need, really what I need, what kind of revelation I need a revelation, I need an answer as reflected on a human mirror. So that's the revelation I'm looking for. So sometimes, we separate things out, that we say there's this revelation, which is the sentence, what is written in the book, and there's its, let's say, interpretation or, how we live it and so on. But in reality, the revelation is the way it is being reflected on a human mirror. This is what I'm looking for. That is what I need. So going back to your conclusion then, I need someone. Like I don't need a book. I don't need an audio recording, or I don't need a video, movie. I need someone who would, who would be the best recipient of this revelation, the best mirror, and then reflect to me. And now, as I understand, you are saying that when we look at ourselves, we see that we are not the best mirror for it, and it's not hard to see it. Maybe it is hard to accept it, but it's not hard to see it.
Right, and I guess I'll just ask this and then the response continue, but like I do find that tendency in myself, right? And others may as well, that like it's hard to accept that another person has the biggest jug of questions. It's like, no, I have a big jug of questions, or I'm needy as well. There's this tendency to not want to accept someone other than myself to be that recipient, right? And so the question is like, how do I deal with that tendency? And that, is it also something that's just given? And am I misutilizing it? But what do I do with that, if you will?
Yes, I think this understanding otherness is so central, and it looks like it is pretty much purpose of my existence, if I can arrive to that conclusion. Because if I realize or to the extent that I realize I am an art, I will realize the creator to be the God. Otherwise, I wouldn't. So in this like two end of things, the attitude to say that no, I have more questions or anything of this sort, still I'm not releasing that. Still I am willing to be the one who owns something. But very beautifully, as we were talking, when they narrate the very beginning, and there's a hadith about this, very detailed hadith about the first revelation when it came, the angel comes and says, read. The response of the prophet is, I don't know reading. This is not simply, I don't know how to read letters or anything, but it is representing a state, a posture. He says, I don't know, I don't own it. Like, let's expand it. Because literally, prophet never read in his life. Although the first command was read, he never learned reading. So that means we cannot take it literally reading Arabic letters. So what was his response? Then we need to understand his response as well. I don't know reading shouldn't literally mean I don't know reading Arabic. So he was asked, and I am being asked, something happens in my life, I go through some troubles, and I'm trying to make sense of why is this happening. I can have two attitudes there. My attitude can be, let me think about this more. I'm going to find a solution out of that. Let me go and ask to that other person. Somebody else would be knowing it. Still, I am thinking that even if I don't know, you would know, he would know. So in this sense, still I am seeking for the answer on earth, meaning that since I didn't know it, my knowledge was this one. So I'm a small God, but it is not within my understanding. But maybe you being another small God, it might be within your scope. Is still my understanding. But prophet's attitude here is, and prophetic attitude is, I don't know. So am I able to say I don't know? Or how can I say I don't know? I think this is so crucial. And it looks like it is the root of prophethood, being able to say I don't know, or being able to say I am an abd. Because after being an abd, he is a Rasul.
Right, but that's also in terms of being able to say that in relation to my creator, right? Because, like there, and this is, I think, very common in that, like, you'll share trouble with someone and they'll try to offer some solutions and you don't want them to offer solutions. You're like, oh, I already know what I have to do. And in that moment, you're not receptive to anything that can be offered. So it's in terms of like, from only the one that can know, that can provide guidance, I can be completely open or try to be open and say, I don't know. But I want to ask more about this in a moment, but Brother Usman, I wanted to get your question.
It might be related. Maybe I might be jumping ahead of the content, but the other point that I wanted to make, like when we say that we bear witness that he's an up and Rasul. So like to me, like what it really means in terms of like everyday language. So he's someone who has like same kind of questions and many more, or similar kind of questions and many more that I can relate to. So he's an up. He's a human being like anyone else, seeking an answer for his own issues in life. And so that gives me an opportunity to be able to relate with the prophet. And his being a messenger is looking into the aspect like that. He said that like he's like an ocean in terms of the questions. And that is the aspect that looks at the relationship between him and the creator in terms of like again on like being aware of the consciousness and also the questions and the issues and the problems that he's dealing with that he needs an answer for. So that aspect looks at the relationship between the up and the creator, which turns that relationship into a messengerhood because of the number of the issues that he's dealing with. So in that sense, like he takes the message, sees something in his like in himself as an answer to his human questions, and through that, I find a way to relate to him and also be the recipient of the message as well and find solutions and answers to my own questions.
Along that note as well, I want to, because we keep using this word abd, right? I want to just return to that and like ask you to expand a bit more on what that means and how it relates to this topic as well. What is this? How are we to understand this concept of abd and its relation to this need for a prophet or otherwise?
So let's go back to the first session. So in the first session, we talked about how I see order within the universe, how things are being made, and I am being made at the same time. I am the recipient. Everybody is receiving things, like the babies here are receiving cuteness, or they're receiving their mercy through their mothers. Everybody is a recipient. So there is a giver. So, and on the other hand, like there is giver, and this hand, I am the recipient. So giver recipient relationship is there. So being a recipient and being an absolute recipient, meaning that I don't have anything but need. Need means I have zero. That's what it is. There's not something to own really. Being needy. I lack everything. I am being given. Once I am given, how do I respond back? So being a recipient and is being an object. Recognition of I own nothing is art. But it doesn't stop there. Like even if you smile to little baby Ali there, he smiles back to me. Like it's so interesting. I am made as such, even from that 4 months. If you smile, he responds back. Smile is something good. You give it to him, he reciprocates it. So now I am being given everything. I was so needy. I am given everything. I am hardwired, if you like, to
How am I
respond
given
back.
everything? Like, what do you mean by that?
So let's say let's take it from very easy. The air that I am breathing, it's being served up until here. It comes to here. I am so much in need of air, and it's being served to my nose. Like the best distribution network we have is Amazon, and it's asking me to go and hit on a DoorDash or whatever. So some button, then it goes with the system, and then I am being thankful for serving them whatever I want. Like I ran out of diapers or whatever, and they send it to me by me paying $120. I'm super happy. I mean, they take the money, but for that service, they take another $120, right? 40. I guess they increased the price. Sorry. So right now, air is something that I am in need of constantly, and it's being served up to here. Unimaginable. Water, I am so much in need of. He is raising the water from ocean, bringing it all the way to Philadelphia. It was raining today. And airmail, yeah, it's not like the most expensive mail. He's bringing it with airmail. So, or let's say I am happy today, the mood that I am in, because sometimes I'm upset and I cannot get out of this mood, which means happiness is being given to me. Being upset is being given to me. Everything is being given to me. I don't have control over things. So as I am the recipient of everything like this, you can just increase. And I guess to make sure that I can confirm this, I need to ask the question, do I own it? Where did I get it from?
So there's this sort of compassionate sustenance
Constantly, yeah.
constantly that I am being a recipient of, but the question is, to what degree am I being a conscious recipient of it?
Yeah. And like Baby Ali does, I am hardwired to respond back because I am indebted to. What I choose to do, because this indebtedness is there, my ego sometimes also doesn't want to admit it. And although this indebtedness is there, I would thank back if I see it as a gift. If I don't see it as a gift, then I don't need to thank. This is why if I say it is natural, I don't need to thank anyone because it has to be there. Or it is the gift of Mother Nature, whoever that person is, then I say, oh, thank you, Mother Nature, and I'm done with that. But to the extent that I realize my abness, then I will be filled with the idea of ubudiyya, responding back. Because abness is not simply some intellectual state, you sit there and say, yeah, I'm like an abd. This is what we were mentioning in the previous session when Gürkan was saying, like the idea of zakat. What does zakat mean? I might be feeling like I have this $5,000 in my pocket that Shahid gave me in the first session. It is mine. But actually, Shahid gave that $5,000 to me so that I go and distribute it to other people. So he comes and says, Yusuf, it's not your money. I entrusted you with it. You cannot spend it as you wish. You cannot do it like as. So you will have to spend it in my command. And to make sure that you understand the point, I want you to give 1/4 of it to Muhammad. It's hard for me to do that because ideally I can say, yeah, of course I know this is right, but there's another part of me which wants to enjoy the money or pretending as if I am the boss and show off with the money to people and whatnot. But he says, no, for you to recognize that you are not the boss, give this 1/4 of this money to Muhammad. And by doing this action, actually, I am reciprocating being an abd. Because giving zakat, for example, is an ubudiyya, is a worshipping, because it makes me realize I am an abd. I am showing my abdness to myself.
So just to perhaps summarize a little bit, and you can fill in where or correct wherever you think it's different, but being an abd then means becoming conscious of my neediness, becoming conscious of the sort of compassionate sustenance that's being given to me at every level, right? Not just physically, but also in terms of like everything else, that all the human feelings that I come with. And returning that back to the Creator, responding in such a way where I recognize that it's being given, and that is such that then ubudiyya, worship, becomes a sort of acknowledgement. This is being given and I acknowledge it. And that acknowledgement, that process of recognizing my Creator, my Rabb, right, then becomes returning it, attributing it to the correct source, if you will. Yeah.
Just very quick, can you say that like actually Prophet also teaching how to establish a relationship with the Creator or with the Lord? Like when you say it is definitely part of it. I'm not like saying that that's not what it is. Like those like salat or zakat, those are like very physical forms of like the reflection of that like relationship. But when you say ubudiyya, like it is an actually a relationship that since he is an absolute one and I'm the created one, and in that sense, like what is my access to him?
So that's
How do I really? What's my relationship to him?
Defining boundaries.
By defining boundaries, at the same time he teaches you, the Prophet teaches you how to establish a communication and relationship with your Creator, so you can actually put that in practice in your everyday life.
so the question that that comes with that, right? Which is what we were going to talk about next. So that was a
I'm
good
sorry,
No,
if
that was a good
I'm
transition.
hijacking your.
That was a good transition. Is that how do I learn ubudiyya? How do I learn living in a state of being an abd by observing a person, right? Because like I don't know that person's inner world, but it's a mode of relating and communicating or being in dialogue with one's creator. But how can that be if this prophet, one who must be a prophet, right, is the one who can be an abd in that let's say maximal way or best exemplified way. But how do I learn that? How do I have access to that? You were using the word like he can teach us that, but how do I, again, how is that to be taught to me? How am I to learn that by just observing a person, especially when it's such a state of being that is,
Between you and God.
it's a very intimate, it's a very personal sort of relationship of acknowledging one's creator is not something like I declare I am acknowledging the creator. It's a state of mind, it's a state of being, it's a consciousness, right? And as you said, being an up means also living with the understanding that I am not the owner of these attributes, that I am not the owner of these qualities, that I am in need of being guided, I am in need of all the sustenance that I'm receiving. It's a state of living, right? It's a state of being. But how is that to be transmitted to me by someone who I am saying must be that person, must be that prophet? Like they can perhaps, and part of why this question is so important is that, like, how would I be able to verify that person in the first place, right? If I don't have access to that state, which is such an internal state, if you will.
So human is such that it never stays inside. What I mean by that is, let's say after this discussion, so you say, oh, very beautiful discussion and whatnot, and you start praising me. And you are careful observing what I do. If I have this feeling of, yeah, we did something good, 30%, 70% belongs to God, but 30% is to us. You will notice some sort of a shape over here. I cannot stop doing this. Like I was, it's not relentless, I would say. Like something like this. You will notice human cannot really pretend whatever is inside is somehow going outside. So if my attitude would be when you say, oh, Yusuf, it was very beautiful, you did a great job, whatever, even if you say mashallah and whatever, if my attitude then becomes astaghfirullah, what do you mean it's not mine? Like if I take it, because if I'm truly an Arab, I should be taking it as an insult. I should say that, what do you mean I'm not a burglar? I didn't steal it, it's not mine. And you're as if saying that it's yours, it's not mine. This is what astaghfirullah should mean. When somebody praises you, we say astaghfirullah. Why? It's something, well, no, I didn't steal it. It's not mine, it's his.
I seek forgiveness from this claim.
Yeah, I'm seeking forgiveness. If I am truly there, this would be my reflex, if you like. And you would observe this. I mean, how much can I pretend about this? And especially think about the Prophet's life was, his house was next to masjid. He had multiple wives just for that purpose, actually, within his prophethood, so that there are many 24/7 observers of his life. And right next to masjid, people were constantly, day in, day out, was observing them. The point was, how does this person behave? How does this person live?
So I'm just going to pause right there for a moment, because that's initially when you were saying, well, it would reflect in someone's attitude. Like I have different hats. I'm a very good pretender, I would say. I can be this type of person or be this type of person. And we have actors, right? We have these people in the media that can play certain characters or movie films, whatever, in like such a perfect state that, or like, when you're watching like, I guess in these Turkish dramas or K-dramas, whatever, you're like, how can the romantic lead, like, how can they not love each other in real life? Look at how they're looking at each other, their gaze or whatever, but what I'm trying to say is that even then, like, there are psychopaths, right? There are people that can reflect such a different state of being than what they're living internally. So then, one of the questions becomes like, either the person is genuinely a prophet, or they must be a psychopath if they're pretending that whole time. But there's also, I guess, that second aspect of it, which you started highlighting, and I think you can expand on a little bit more, is that, because I'm not talking yet about a specific figure, right? Even though what we'll talk about Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but it must be such a person that I can genuinely, in a holistic fashion, be able to observe and see how this person lives their life in such a way where like trickery or deceit would not be possible. Either they are a prophet, or they are the most deceitful of the deceitful of the deceitful. And it must be very apparent, right? Because being an abd, as we defined it, right? And then pretending to be the most abd is at such like the opposite scales of the spectrum that it must manifest itself in one way or another. But I must be able to observe or have an understanding of how that life is being lived, so that I can, in full contentment, be able to say, okay, this person is, there's something different here, and I can maybe like, pay more close attention to this, because it could be like what I'm searching for in one respect.
So I would be observing that person, and that whatever is inside is going to be spilling outside anyways. This is inevitable. And how long can you pretend is another question. But as you said, yes, a person who is a pretender of a prophet, like it cannot be that with good intentions, let's say I see that, oh, these are Bedouins and they don't know what to do, so let me guide them for their own good. I am pretending to be a prophet because these people don't understand with philosophy and whatnot. So let me come up with a good worldview, which is scripture in this case, because like the Western civilization, Orientalism is posing this sort of an idea, saying that prophet was an imposter, but he was a super smart guy, he was a nice person and whatnot, yet he wanted the good of the society. This is why he presented this idea in a way that they would understand, which they were superstitious people, so they thought that if he gives some upper hand, like the authority of a prophet, they would take it. So this is why he pretended like this. But such a thing isn't possible. We are going to talk about this in the tomorrow's first session, like the fourth session. So whether Prophet Muhammad is the prophet that I'm looking for, and can he not be an imposter? But like briefly within the context that we are now discussing, being an imposter of an abd and being a genuine abd are the exact opposite of each other.
At the opposite end of the spectrum.
So if a person is a genuine abd, then he can be good and nice and kind and whatnot. But an imposter cannot show any kindness, because the kindness in there would be actually a total deceit, because that person is claiming to speak in the name of God.
Yeah.
Speaking in the name of God is, let's say if I come and say, oh, Shoaib told me that I'm going to do this and that to you. If Shoaib hears that I am doing something that he didn't say, it's going to be such a disrespectful thing that I would do for Shoaib. I'm speaking on his behalf. Now imagine I am claiming to speak on behalf of the creator of the heavens and the earth, and saying that your God wants you to do this and that. I mean, now imagine the degree of this crime.
Yeah. So just to like take a few steps back, and throughout this discussion so far, we've talked about, the driving question of, okay, given that there must be revelation as guidance from my creator, right, in a human language form, and that there must be some sort of practical guide that can best instruct me in that manner. I asked the question, well, why can't that be me, right? And we talked about how the more I accept my impotence, my poverty, my neediness as a human being, the more receptive I become to speech from my creator. As though like I'm a vessel, and I recognize the emptier I am, the more I can fill it in with that water, with that thirst that I genuinely need. And we also discussed how to be an abd, right, is to recognize that neediness, recognize, I'm using these words because I enjoy these words, but recognize the compassionate sustenance that is being given to me by my Rabb, and be able to live within a framework in which I recognize him as the owner of all that sustenance, as the giver of that sustenance, and live in such a way where I'm an active, conscious recipient of that. And so, one of the conclusions that we're coming at here is that there must be a person who is able to embody that oddness to the, let's say, maximum degree of recognizing their neediness, have all the questions that I have and everyone else has, as Brother Osman was saying, I'm not sure where he went, but like have the sort of biggest jug of questions, and he called it an ocean of questions, right? And we also just now touched upon the idea that in one way or another, it's going to become apparent to me if someone is like that, right? By virtue of examining how they live their life, because pretending to be such is the complete opposite, in such a way where it would be the complete opposite of what an act is, and in one way or another, filter through, if you will. I guess the final question now then comes to is that, given all of this, given the fact that I am searching for someone like that, right? Because if I acknowledge that there must be someone like that, and I'm searching for someone like that, how do I know that I will be able to find such a person? How do I know that I won't be like thinking this person's, the one, but then they're not, and then it's like this, and as we talked about in the previous session, this sort of trial and error, like the stakes are too high, my life is passing by, right? So how can I really know that there will be such a person, or there is such a person, right? And how can I be receptive to that? If I am convinced, and this is a question I have to ask myself, and if there are obstacles to reaching that conclusion, address them of, if I am convinced that one, given revelation from my Creator, there must be a practical guide that shows me, demonstrates to me how it is to be lived, and that they must be someone other than myself, because I recognize my own deficiencies, and I recognize that I don't live my life in such a way where I'm completely receptive to guidance that can be, but that there must be someone who can exemplify that for me and show me and demonstrate to me. But how do I know if there will be? Is like the question that follows.
So I guess now we are coming to the point of belief in prophethood, being in the conviction that such a person must exist. And I am ready to listen to that person. So I will be searching for such a person. Why will I be searching for such a person? Because so far what we said is, Creator must talk to such a person. But also I would say that such a person cannot be left with the message for himself. Why? Because the Creator is speaking to that person, making him an exemplary mirror for me. So I'm expecting my Maker to show that masterpiece of art, if you like, to me. This is how he does. Like, he creates an apple and makes me a lover of apple. I plant apple trees, I wait for the apple to grow, and I get the apple. So he puts that appetite towards apple in me, which makes me pursue the apple. Likewise, now he made me hungry for his reflections in a human mirror. And he made such a human mirror. Now I have such a person must exist. So then the Creator would talk to that person and would charge that person with the duty of go and shine, invite people, and then they should become like you. Because this is an exemplary person, as my Creator's attracting my attention to apple, which is a masterpiece of art for my stomach. Now, such a person would be a masterpiece of his art for all my humanity. So he would make you hear him. So that means what is up on my shoulders is, since such a one must exist, I would search for such a person. More or less, we have a profile. We will talk about that profile more in tomorrow's first session. But I now have some idea about what to expect from such a person. So does there come into that picture? Not much. I can't say, for example, because there are things in his life versus his words, whatever. So there are matching, not matching. So I would have such a profile, and also for someone who is coming with such a big claim, I would have some sort of measures to test on him. Does he match this? Does he match that? Which I don't want to spoil tomorrow's first session, but at least at the moment now we are after this third session, I have this urge to search for such a person because I truly see the gap he's going to fill in my life.
And if I receive calls or invitations to accept such a person as being that, then I have to go through that process of verification, which we'll talk about more in the sessions tomorrow. But I think you had a question. We have time for a question before we end the session.
Usually there are these, I don't know, quote unquote, let's call them saints, quote unquote, people kind of like pious, righteous people who have a great deal of humility, but also, a great deal of knowledge. And people are just attracted to them. And you see, like, in Morocco, for example, we have called them Zoe, or so, like, you have a teacher, and like people just go and study from them, and so on. So, like, what differentiates someone like that from a prophet?
So this is session 6. So inshallah, tomorrow, last session is going to be about that. Because this is a very important question. Because the person that we said such a person must exist, and I will find him, but this person is 14th century Levitron. So I was in need of seeing such a person, but am I going to be able to find him in person? In history books, I will find him, but in person, how am I going to find him? So this is going to become an entire session in the 6th session.
And how are they going to play that role for me, given the 1400 years ago?
Yes.
So one question that you asked, but I missed now that I'm checking the notes, I'm recognizing that I missed that question. So you said, why would I show resistance not to accept the messenger? Like, or why would I still have this resistance that why it's not me?
Because it's sometimes even less about being me, like just speaking personally, and more about being someone else.
Oh, yeah.
Like, as if, there's this sort of resistance to how imagine like some sort of intermediary, even though we established, we talked about this in the last session as well, but just someone other, like someone else being involved in the picture, I find that resistance, right?
That this happens when that someone else is human.
Mhm.
Like, for example, when it comes to understanding the mercy of the Creator through rain, I don't have any objection with that.
Yeah.
It's okay. I see the rain. I see that, oh, my Maker is merciful.
Right. And that rain is a messenger as well. It's
Yes.
delivering to me
Yeah.
the manifestation, the reflection of that attribute of complete absolute mercy.
But when it comes to a human messenger,
Yeah.
why is this tinkling feeling in me, which is starting a competition in a sense? Why is that happening? One reason might be that this is really a tangible, much more tangible meaning or picture of how I am supposed to be. So actually, by sending a messenger, more than sending a revelation, by sending a messenger, the Creator is, metaphorically speaking, poking his finger into my life.
There's less room for ambivalence.
He says, you're going to be like this. Because I'm perfectly fine with a God who exists, but who doesn't mess up with my life. A prophet means he is now an exemplary person in front of me, and the Creator says, I want you to be like this.
And I really have to, at that point, accept that I don't know. I don't know how to live my life. I don't know how to live in a way that, I don't know how to live the Quran. And like the existence of that person, right, demands that I accept that, but because it's easier, I mean, just again, like personally, like engaging with revelation, being like, okay, I understand, I engage it, and then living my life in a certain way where I think it's being exemplified. But here I have to accept, again, part of being that out, that I don't know, and that I need to be open to being taught.
I have a question. Like, don't you think like actually it would be other way around? Like, if I have like burning desires and like questions like for answers, like the burning desires for answers, I have questions like lingering in my mind. And if I know that there is someone else who has been through, who has similar questions, who has been through similar process, I feel like that actually gravitates me towards that person because I can relate to that person much better. So maybe if I feel like, oh, there is some sort of competition, why me or why someone else, maybe I am not really true to myself.
I think there's that portion of it, and there's also the portion of, yes, I want that guy, right? But I also feel like, as Brother Yusuf was saying, if that ambivalence is lifted of like, okay, this is how to live your life, and I'm exemplifying it through this human being, then as if like my life is being intervened, like my freedom is going to be taken away or restricted, because now just like the example of it is given so explicitly.
I think it might be partially,
Yeah.
I mean, the hydrogen again. I think partially, like, why would people feel that way? Because in the traditional sense, prophethood or prophet himself introduced with a lot of do's and don'ts without going through the previous process of like making sense of his life, going through the questions, struggles, reflections, and contemplations, and like finding answers. So without like going through that like first part of the process, once you introduce the prophet as someone who teaches you how to establish a relationship with the creator, why would I want a relationship at the first place? I don't know him. Like, do I want a like relationship with someone that I do not know? Why would I want that? I think that's partially because, like, in the traditional sense, how like the role of the prophethood or prophet explained to us. We are just keeping the like the most essential step and then like coming with all the in a way burdens, because then they become a burden because I don't even know if I don't know him, the creator, and I don't, since I do not know him, I am not sure if I want to have any kind of relationship with him, right? And the prophet is the one who is supposed to teach me how to establish that relationship.
Right.
Then it's become something very external.
Right. So fundamentally, it has to be driven by a need. Like if you don't feel that need, then it feels externally imposed upon.
Yeah.
We have a minute left, so if you want to say some concluding remarks and maybe anticipatory about tomorrow's, then we can, and then we'll end.
One last point on that. So, for example, at the end of this discussion, when you're going to praise me, and if, let's say, Brother Muhammad is a good example of not being praised, but still, no matter how many years I study Quran and whatnot, this portion of me is still there, who wants to be praised about how great of a presentation this was. Seeing him is going to be disturbing my ego. If I am true to myself, as you said, I shouldn't be disturbed. I should be trying to fix this. But if this part is still struggling, I would say, Brother Muhammad, maybe you should stop coming to here, because you being here is disturbing my state. I don't want to face my reality of not being where I claim to be. So this is why the idea of prophet, one reason, can be disturbing me, because deep down, I am having issues with being an abd. And he is being an exemplary abd, is just shouting at my face, saying that, Yusuf, you are a liar. So this is why I would like to discard him from my way, this way or that way, so that somehow at least I'm going to be consistent within myself. I'm not going to keep receiving this disturbing signal from seeing him. So concluding remarks, inshallah, tomorrow
Yeah.
we will start with first session. Is Muhammad the prophet? Because by now we talked about this, there must exist such a person, and I'm not worthy to be that person. So, and then we hear that Muhammad comes with such a claim. Is he the person that I'm looking for? Would be session 4. Session 5 is going to be, can I trust historical narrations about the prophet? Because now that we said a living, exemplary human being must be there, so that I want to learn, because the scripture speech is, in addition to it, I'm in need of that, but still the life of messenger is another type of speech narrated. So how is this going to be fitting? First question, session 5 is, how reliable are these going to be? How can I benefit from that here and now? Session 6 is going to be, okay, even if they are reliable to whatever extent they are, which we will discuss, then in session 6, we will say, still, it is speech, it is words in books. So still I am in need of a human mirror to observe revelation in. So how am I going to make sense of that? Isn't it spoiling the whole argument of having a human mirror, and yet at the end of 5 sessions, you are showing me, go and read, I don't know, hadith book or anything. If this is what we will be suggesting, we will put a question mark there for now. But did you really answer any question? This would be the 6th session, inshallah.
Right, so tomorrow is Muhammad, the Prophet, ﷺ, that we're talking about here. Does he fulfill that role? Can we verify that? 2, can we trust the narrations that we receive in terms of how they provide guidance, right? And 3rd, does the fact that he ends up being a historical figure nullify the relevance of this practical guide that we're talking about? That's the summary. Inshallah.
So there's something big waiting for it.
Inshallah. So سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين.